Are we live yet? We're good to go? I'll get him all set up here. Get his pointer going. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's good to be back with you again today. And we're live on YouTube. If you've missed last night's two seminars, were kind of foundational information on why do we even believe evolution or creation instead of evolution. What's the basis of that? Of course, it's the Bible, and that's the basis for all of our beliefs, but especially how we got here and why we're here and where we're going. So anyway, Jim Kiefer, I'm the pastor of Heartland Baptist Church. Glad that you could make it, and glad that we could have some folks tuned in today. Mr. Gropey is with us. He's going to present this afternoon, and then we have some displays in the back that he can tell you more about. And we also have some snacks and refreshments, so you can kind of hang out for a little while. Well, nobody will be rushing you out. So take it all in, ask all the questions you want to ask, and we just hope that you have a good afternoon here together. So some of our young people are out of town today, so we've got a little bit smaller group, but we're glad that you could be here. Let's open in prayer, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Gropey. Father, I want to thank you for the day. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and for Tino and his presentation and what we'll be learning today. And we ask for your blessing on our time together, and we pray and ask that you would speak to our hearts and guide and direct and instruct. Give us wisdom and understanding from your word, and we'll give you praise and glory and honor that you deserve. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, sir, come and tell us something that we need to know.
Well, what you need to know is that right now my brother's son is competing for the Michigan State weightlifting championship. So I'm waiting to get a response any minute from my niece on how he did. So I'm not checking the Tigers. The Tigers are getting beat. I'm not checking the Red Wings, but I'll be checking just in case my brother's kid wins the state championship. So anyway, creation is a foundational message to the whole Bible. It doesn't, I mean, what kind of religion, Christianity, Bible would you have if you only believed part of it? And I've got a whole message on how every other doctrine in the Bible depends on the first 2 pages in your Bible. You know, the creation account, you know, the Adam and Eve in the garden, first 2 or 3 pages in your Bible, you can find everything else in the rest of the Bible in foundational form in just the first 3 pages of your Bible. Matter of fact, I know a lady that got saved. She was a scientist and had a college roommate witnessing to her and getting her to read her Bible. And she read her Bible and came to Genesis 6, one of the 6th chapter in the Bible, and there were giants in the earth in those days and also after that. She was a scientist who worked with bones that had been discovered that they call them anomalies that don't fit the evolution theory. And she went to college in Minnesota. And she had seen these anomalies put on display. They don't hide them, but you only get to see them by invitation only if you're important enough or if you're in their clique. But she had seen the bones that they had discovered that didn't match evolution theories. She had seen the bones of humans that would have been 10 to 12 feet tall. And she saw the real things. So when she comes across the verse, there were giants in those days, she said that just brought a chill on her, because she says, I know it's true because I've seen them myself in my studies. And so then she called her roommate and says, this book's right. I need to get saved. And she led her to the Lord that day. That's an interesting verse to get saved on, but it shows how important the early chapters of the Bible are. The creation account, the flood account, it all depends. We'll get more to that tomorrow in the morning service, where Jesus believed all those things. So if you believe in Jesus, then you have to believe in the flood and the creation and David and Goliath and all those kind of things, because Jesus believed in them. Oh, I should turn my microphone on. People back home, people watching on YouTube. Oh, that one's on too? All right. I don't do too much animation while I'm here. So today we're going to look at dinosaurs today. Is there a possibility that there's some dinosaurs that have lived all the way through to modern times? Maybe they went extinct, but it wasn't 65 million years ago. If they went extinct, it was a whole lot more recently than that. I have a message that I usually do before this one about dinosaurs and man, and it shows hundreds of evidences that men and dinosaurs lived at the same time. And people did drawings, people did artwork, figurines, all kind of things of dinosaurs. There's just no way you can call them anything else. And especially when you see hundreds of them, cave drawings and artwork and various things. So we're going to assume that we're already past that point, that yes, we understand that dinosaurs did not live 65 million years ago. They lived a lot more modern than that. And we'll get right into that. So we will start at the point of the assumption that, yes, dinosaurs did live a lot longer than evolutionists say they lived. And there wasn't no 65 million years ago. The Bible dates trace back to about 6,000 years ago. And if you trace from Adam all the way up to Abraham, and Abraham all the way up to Jesus, and Jesus up to now, it's about 6,000 years. Give or take 15 minutes. Might be a little off, but pretty close. So we'll get right to it. I'm Tino Gropey from Wildwood Baptist Church in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And I mentioned yesterday that my friend John Scally was going to tune in. He didn't. But he did watch it last night afterward, and he said he's tuning in today. So he better be watching right now because I sent him the link. Hi, John. Anyway, I normally would really rip him for that because he told me he was going to watch and he didn't until later. But he's got two aces in his hand. He's got two sons that are pastors. And they might want a creation speaker someday, so I don't want to make him too mad. So you got lucky, John. So we will get to the point. Scared of dinosaurs? Now, what was really cool, I preached at a church in Iowa that had a real big screen come about all the way down to the floor, and except they had it come right out here. And when that picture popped up, the kids in the auditorium literally stepped back like it was a real dinosaur coming at them. That was one of the coolest things. But there's nothing to be scared of. People think dinosaurs are so mysterious and spooky and whatever. They're just animals. Nothing to get freaked out about. People make stupid theories like the devil put dinosaur bones in the ground to fool us. No, they're just big animals. We'll get into that. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Dinosaurs are used for evolutionary propaganda. Because, see, we didn't know about dinosaurs until the mid-1800s when they started digging up dinosaur bones. At least modern science didn't. Ancient man knew about dinosaurs and drew pictures of them and drew figures of them and all kind of things like that. And they didn't even see the bones. They saw them from the outside. They knew what they looked like. They knew what the outside of the dinosaur looked like. Our scientists don't know that, except for the few where they found some skin on it and got some skin patterns. They knew more about dinosaurs than our modern scientists do today. That's because they saw them. Now, that doesn't mean that man and dinosaurs lived in the same place. It means they lived at the same time. I mean, we live today with tigers and lions and bears and sharks, but we don't live in the same place with them. If you walk out the door, you're probably not going to get attacked by a gorilla because they don't live in town. The same thing with dinosaurs. They didn't live in the cities with people, but they did live at the same time, and so people did see them. But when you see a dinosaur, the first thing that pops into people's mind is millions of years ago, and they evolved. And they absolutely have no proof that they lived millions of years ago or that they evolved from anything into anything. But they've pushed that propaganda for so long, that's the initial reaction pretty much everybody gets when they see a dinosaur. Makes them think about evolution and millions of years. And neither one of them have any evidence because of dinosaurs. And a lot of the Christians, especially when they first started coming out with their theory of evolution and discovering dinosaur bones and things, we didn't have Answers in Genesis and ICR and groups like that and creation speakers. We didn't have our scientists hadn't done enough research yet because it was a brand new thing. So a lot of Christians kind of got taken back. So they started coming up with theories to try and make it fit the Bible, instead of just recognizing they're just animals that we just hadn't found until more recent times. So the church starts compromising and trying to make the Bible figurative and try and make it allegorical and trying to fit evolution and creation together. And most people, maybe, when they get saved, they do that. I did. When I first got saved, I believed in evolution. That's what I was taught in school. So when I got saved, I kind of tried to mesh the Bible with evolution. Well, maybe that's what God used. That's how He created. He used evolution to create. But the more you study, the more you realize they are opposites. They're polar opposites. They're mutually exclusive. If one happened, the other one didn't happen. And so again, we have nothing to fear. Dinosaurs are just big lizards. Hey, we've got big mammals. We've got big sea creatures. What's wrong with big? Actually, we have some pretty big lizards too. Big reptiles. So just dinosaurs might have been a little bit bigger than most of the ones we have today, but big deal. It's nothing to freak out about, nothing to worry about. They were created on day 6. Just like the Bible says, with all the rest of the land animals. The ocean animals and sea and sky animals are created on day 5. Land animals on day 6. Just a little bit before man. Adam and Eve. Adam was the last creation, and then He made Eve out of Adam. And so dinosaurs did technically exist minutes and minutes and minutes before men, but not millions of years. They were maybe created in the afternoon, and man created in the evening, or something like that. But so. It wasn't millions of years. And they've lived with man all along. And there's mentions of them in literature around the world. Like I said, drawings and figurines and sculptures and stuff. And footprints. We found footprints of dinosaurs and humans. One out in the hall has a dinosaur footprint right next to a human footprint. And there's several of them that exist in the world. And several of them where they're a little further apart. You got dinosaur tracks going this way and human tracks going that way, but to find them where they're close together, maybe those tracks are a little blurry, and you'd have to get a track from over here, the dinosaur, and a track from over here, the human, and they might be 100 feet apart, and I can't fit a 100-foot stone in my car to be able to take it to churches, so I have to take the one I got, but it's still pretty good, discovered down in Texas. And dinosaurs were on the ark. You didn't need one of every kind of dinosaur. Just you needed a dinosaur that would reproduce other kind of dinosaurs. Just like you didn't need every breed of dog. Every dog has DNA from the wolf. So if you had wolves on the ark, you could produce every breed of dog that exists in the world today. So you didn't need hundreds of dogs, 2 by 2. You needed a male wolf and a female wolf. And that accounts for all the dogs. Probably the same thing with cats. And who knows? I mean, unless we were back there to see what animals came from what, we probably will have no way to know for sure how diverse things might have gotten. But they estimate that they needed less than 10,000 animals on the ark. Well, 10,000 is not that many. I mean, we have a football stadium in Michigan. They call it the Big House. That they have they seat 115,000 animals every Saturday for a football game. Now, if you could, and that's about the size of the ark, the size of a sports stadium. So there was plenty of room. There actually was room for, if you ever go to the ark, Answers in Genesis ark encounter, and you see that ark, they could have fit the big dinosaurs if they wanted to. There's enough room on it. But it would make sense that Noah would have taken juvenile dinosaurs. For one, if you got rough seas, young people and young creatures can take a bouncing and they just get up and play again, no big deal. Us older folks, we get bounced around like that, we break bones, we pull muscles, we tear tendons, it don't work so well. So juveniles would be much better. They'd be smaller, they'd eat less, unless they were teenagers, maybe not. Teenagers sometimes can eat more, but most juveniles eat less than most adults. They would make less waste, which probably made Noah's sons very happy because that was their duty to clean up the animal waste. And they would be at the prime age to reproduce once the flood was over and reproduce their whole lives. What sense would it make to have grandpa and grandma, T-Rex and elephant and giraffe and mouse and turtle, and send the grandpas and grandmas out? They're going to die in a year or less and not reproduce. So it makes perfect sense that they be juveniles. The largest dinosaur eggs are just a little bit bigger than a football. So you don't need 20-foot tall T-Rex. You need 20-inch tall T-Rex on the ark. Makes a lot more sense. So all the dinosaurs, and now dinosaurs probably had growth spurts. So once they became just about the, like adolescence, puberty, and they sprouted up. So they probably, the ones on the ark were just before that point. And then once they got off the ark, they grew up and reproduced the rest of the world. And they probably had difficulty eventually, after a few generations, adjusting to the new climate. The world was a whole different place before the flood. The atmosphere was different, oxygen level was different, the pressure was different. There's a lot of it's speculation, but because we weren't there to see it. But they've built hyperbaric chambers, which have high pressure oxygen and high amounts, concentration percentage of oxygen, and people can heal 10 times faster or more in a hyperbaric chamber. Or people can heal from things in a chamber they couldn't heal at all from without the chamber. And so the hyperbaric system would be, we would have global warming, but it would be a good thing. Everything would grow better, they'd grow bigger, they'd be stronger, they'd be healthier, they'd heal faster. They speculate that you could cut yourself and then watch that cut heal in just a minute or so right in front of you, because your body would work so much better. You could eat pretty much whatever you want and stay in much better shape. So there are a whole lot of benefits. But the world wasn't like that after the flood. It might have had some residual effect, especially for the first generation, and the ones that were born before the flood, and maybe their children still had some of that. But every generation would have less and less and less, and the larger animals that needed more oxygen and things like that would probably die off. And so they probably did start going extinct, or were only in certain areas. And there are a few areas in the world that are still maybe not hyperbaric, but are tropical, where dinosaurs might be able to survive. They probably don't get as big as they used to. There's probably not as many of them as there used to be, but there still could be some. We're going to look at some evidence for that. The possibility that they did exist up until modern times, and maybe even still today. And we're going to, and this guy, he's a president of the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology. He said co-occurrence of men and dinosaurs, that means if they lived at the same time, would dispel an Earth with vast antiquity, which means old Earth. So he's saying if man and dinosaurs lived at the same time, it proves the Earth is young. And he says the entire history of creation, including the day of rest, could be accommodated in the 7 biblical days of the Genesis myth. Now he calls it a myth because he's not on our side. He's an evolutionist. But what he's saying is if we can prove man and dinosaurs lived together, it blows evolution out of the water. Well, you can go back in the hallway and see that footprint of a human footprint and a dinosaur footprint on the same rock that was laid down at the same time during the flood, I would assume. That alone meets his criteria. So he's admitting that evolution is the myth. But he says an evolution would be vanquished. Okay, evolution's vanquished. Let's go home. We win. There are a lot of creatures that have escaped our detection until modern times. See, people, scoffers will say, well, if there were dinosaurs, we'd have found them by now. Oh, you'd be surprised at the things that we didn't find until just recent years. Some of them large things, some of them really unique things. We have what's called Lazarus taxa, animals that were found in a fossil record but have thought to have been extinct for millions of years. The coelacanth was thought to be extinct for 65 million years. It was used as an index fossil, meaning that anything they found with the coelacanth, they assumed lived 65 million years ago, and the coelacanth appears with the dinosaurs. So if the coelacanth went extinct 65 million years ago, then the dinosaurs must have went extinct 65 million years ago, because we don't find any of them around today. Until 1938, when a guy caught a coelacanth and said, well, what's this doing here? Well, in the subsequent years since then, they have found 3 entire schools of coelacanth in 2 different oceans. So there's, we don't swim in the ocean very much. We don't swim very deep in the ocean, so we've just never encountered them until modern times, but they've been there all along. And they're still there today. And then the same thing with the tuatara. It shows up in their fossil record where they say it's been extinct for 200 million years, but they found them alive in Australia. They're still alive today. We just hadn't detected them until recent years. The Metasequoia tree in Japan shows up in the fossil record as going extinct 20 million years ago. But here you can see a picture of a Metasequoia in front of a modern building, which either proves the Metasequoia did not go extinct 20 million years ago, or they had modern buildings 20 million years ago. I don't think they did. This one too, I have one. I bought it, and there's a picture of it. It died after about 5 years. It's a more tropical plant, and it couldn't survive a few years in Wisconsin. But I still have the remains of it in one of my folders at home. I didn't bring it with me, but it was a woolly pine found in Australia in 1994, and the botanical garden director, Carrick Chambers, said that it was like finding a living dinosaur. And in reality, it was. It was thought to be extinct for 150 million years, more than twice as long as the dinosaurs were supposed to be extinct for. But it's still grown today in Australia, and now probably other places if they've transplanted it. And the ones that are around today are just like the ones in a fossil record, which means nothing evolved into anything. It's the same plant all along, the same animals all along. There's no evolution there. Now, finding a tree doesn't excite people, even if it was supposed to be extinct 100 million years ago. It's a tree. But factually, it proves the same thing as if we found a dinosaur today. But dinosaurs would excite people. If they found T-Rex somewhere in the world, people would notice that, and it would be a big deal. Now, scientifically, it's no different. This already proves everything that finding a dinosaur would prove. That their timeline is wrong. Things did not go extinct 100 million years ago. They still are alive today. This proves that. If we never find a dinosaur, it doesn't matter. We already win. We already win that battle. But dinosaurs have such a hold on people. That's why the movies that used dinosaurs were the biggest sellers. People, kids especially, love dinosaurs. You find kids that are flunking out of school, but they can name 150 different kind of dinosaurs because that's what they're interested in. Besides the living fossils, the Lazarus taxa, they're called Lazarus taxa. Wasn't that funny? They take a name from the Bible that's the evolutionists use that term. Well, we've also had new discoveries. Some are not so spectacular, but they still are new discoveries. Like we find animals like this all the time. Most of the time, they're just different species of animals that already exist. A different kind of duck, a different kind of frog, a different kind of kangaroo. But we're familiar with the general animals anyway. But they find some unusual things, a lot of sea creatures, because we have only explored about 5% of the oceans. We actually know more about the moon than we know about our own oceans, because we can't get that deep in the oceans. We don't explore that much, and they're huge. We don't know what's down in the oceans, in the depths of the oceans. But they have found some sizable creatures, and they'll be bigger than this one's coming up. And only within the last, several decades or so. They discovered this okapi in 1900. That's only a little over 100 years ago. And you wonder, take a look at him. He's the size of a moose. He's got legs like a zebra. How did he hide from our scientists until 1900? How could you miss him? I don't know. I don't know. It looks like he would stand out, but they didn't discover it until 1900. They didn't discover this Sayola ox, which is about the size of a deer or so, until 1993. A lot of you guys were alive in 1993. In your lifetime, they discovered a creature of that size. Those top two ones were discovered in Vietnam. This one, the giant muntjac, was discovered the year before, a little bit smaller maybe, but it's still a good-sized animal like a deer. I got a couple years ago, they had one, and I didn't know it at the time, they had one in the Oshkosh Zoo, a baby giant muntjac, and I got to pet it. I didn't realize at the time what it was. And then I learned about it and thought, wow, that's incredible. I just pet an animal that proved that the Bible's right. But it grows. The giant panda, how does that hide anywhere? But we didn't discover that until late 1800s. The duck-billed platypus, again, that's an unusual animal. You think, how could somebody not have noticed that? But that was only a couple hundred years ago they discovered it. But there are some that were discovered much more recently than things like this. In 1910, they discovered the Komodo dragon otters. One thing I didn't fix there, I guess, when I looked these up yesterday to change all the fonts. Anyway, the Komodo dragon was discovered in 1910. It's only about 100 years ago, and they're 10 feet, 10-foot long. That's almost dinosaur size. And we didn't. How would a 10-foot lizard escape detection of our brilliant scientists until just 100 years ago? But they did. This other one here, the golden spotted monitor, gets to about 7 feet. That's still pretty good size. That's bigger than most people are tall. And he wasn't discovered until 2010. Our scientists missed 7-foot and 10-foot lizards until modern times. And this is a neat one. It's a little guy, but it's called Draco volans. It's a little lizard that has wings, and it looks like a dragon, and it flies like a dragon. It only gets maybe about 18 inches, but a lot of lizards, a lot of reptiles grow their whole lives. There's some that don't, some that do, depends on their bone structure. But, we know that humans in the Bible lived 900 some years before the flood. And then after the flood, it dropped real quick to about 400 years, and then 200 years, and then what we have today, 70 or 80 years. So if animals lived longer before the flood, just like humans did, because they're living in different conditions, they would grow for their whole lives. So maybe a 18-inch lizard that only lives 10 years or 15 years, if he lived 150 years or 200 or 300 years, he might get really big. He might get big and be considered a dinosaur. And we may dig up bones of his ancestors from before the flood that were huge and would be a little bit more like this guy, except bigger. And that was discovered in 2015. Probably everybody in this room was alive in 2015. And here's just a few more pictures of them. 8 inches long. I said 18. So they're a little bit smaller even than that. And they can fly 30 feet, which is pretty good for something that's only 8 inches. Then in 1976, I was in high school in 1976. So it was a long time ago, but not that long. So don't laugh. But this is I believe now the third largest shark known to exist, behind the basking shark and the whale shark. And it was discovered in 1976. The third largest shark in the world, our scientists had never seen it until 1976. And the way it got caught was the ship was pulling in its anchor, and the shark bit the anchor. Now that's quite a fishing hook, to use your anchor for a fish hook. Put a little worm on this big anchor and throw it out there and catch yourself a big shark. And you can see some of these pictures, it almost looks like it's robotic, it's really kind of neat. And they don't eat meat or maybe very small stuff, just like a basking shark. They're like the vacuum cleaners of the ocean. Then they've had a few wash up on shore in recent times. They had found bones of this creature called the Karasu whale in the 1940s. There were reports of it. They found skeletons of it in 1948, but had never seen the animal, so they figured it must have been extinct. And they went looking for it, never could find one. But in 2016, one washed ashore. And they said, wow, that creature still exists, and that's a whale, 24 feet long. And our scientists had missed it until 2016. Some neat stuff about giant squid. A slide that I put in on my drive at home that I didn't bring with me, so I don't have a picture of it. But actually, the picture they showed with it was this one here, where a squid attacked a boat. You can look up the USS Stein, and it was operational in the late 1970s until it got attacked by a giant squid. And the evidence, well, I hope I remember it later on to tell you how big it would have been. But here's some interesting giant squids. They found some here and there, and scientists dispute what they came from, how big they could have been. Oh no, it's a decayed whale, but now we do more modern tests on it, and the tests are confirming, yes, these things were squid and octopus. The one in 1896 washed up in St. Augustine, Florida, that it had only partial tentacles. They were ripped off or eaten off or something, but what they had only measured about 20 feet, 15 feet on each side. But they said if they were whole, the squid would have been about 75 feet, which is much bigger than the squid we know about, and that's big enough to fight a boat. There's a lot. The sailors have a lot of stories about having encounters with octopus and squid out on the sea. You got to realize they didn't have 500-foot long boats. They might have had 20-foot, 30-foot long boats. So a squid that was 30 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet, it sure could put up a fight against some of the boats we had back then. Then we had some doctors that examined it, scientists, and DeWitt Webb and Addison Verrill from Yale identified it as an octopus. I know I've said squid because we're kind of considering them both together. But they identified it as an octopus. Our technology improved, and Dr. Joseph Gennaro in 1971 from the University of Florida did some experiments and said, yep, it is an octopus. Some of the early scientists would say, oh, it's the remains of a whale or something. It's not. Well, they're proving more and more. And then Dr. Roy Mackel from the University of Chicago in 1986, with even more modern methods, did some more tests on it and confirmed what the other guys. He says, yes, it's an octopus, and it was really that big. So there are large octopus and squid in the oceans. The largest reported giant squid from the 1920s washed up in New Zealand was 60 feet. That's pretty big. Now, they don't have many that big, but if they find some, that means there's some more in the ocean that we don't find. The colossal squid gets as big as 40 feet. There's kind of a blurry picture of one from New Zealand from 2007. And again, if we've only explored 5% of the oceans, what's in the other 95%? Could be things we have no clue. Could still be megalodons, 60-foot sharks. It's not impossible. Then they caught a giant squid, a Japanese crew in 2005. But it was a baby giant squid, a juvenile, and it was 30 feet long. And they said if the juvenile is 30 feet long, the adults would have been about approaching 100 feet. That's a big squid. And it has escaped detection of our best scientists until now. We didn't even know about the baby one until just 2005. So how many mommies and daddies are down there that are 2 or 3 times as big as that one? Could be a lot. I saw a documentary that how they were looking for squids. It was pretty neat. They'd find little ones. A lot of sea creatures are kind of cannibalistic. They live in the sea. That's all they got. So they eat each other sometimes. And squid and octopus are basically cannibalistic, and they wrap around something with their tentacles, and once they do that, it's game over because they got a beak on the inside, a hard beak, and they just gnaw away at whatever they caught. And big squids fight whales and large animals. Once they got it wrapped up, they got it. And so what they do is they catch little squids, and they use the little squids for bait, and they go down, the divers go down, they put on a coat of armor, like a knight almost. It's a chain mesh thing because too heavy they'd sink. But because if the squid catches it, they want the squid to catch them. Because they use the little squid as bait so they can catch the bigger squid, 5, 10 footer, which is, if a 5 or 10 foot squid came at you, that'd be scary. And they let them catch them on purpose. Now, if they didn't have all this chainmail on them, it would kill them. But they can't bite through the chainmail, so they catch the squid, then they got him, and now they use him for bait for a bigger squid. And that's what happened is they caught some of these decent-sized squid and put them out for bait, and they got a bite. They didn't catch the huge one, but they got a picture of it, and they were looking for Humboldt squid. That's the kind they were catching and using for bait, and hoping to catch another Humboldt squid. But they said that what this one looked like, it looked like what's called an Architeuchus squid. And if it was a Humboldt squid, the proportions of the tentacles and everything, it would have been 60 feet, which is huge. But if it was an Architeuchus, as it looks like, he'd have been over 100 feet. So they found evidence of very large squids. This was in 2013 in the Sea of Cortez. That's pretty modern times. And our scientists didn't find it until recently. The modern gorilla, again, was only discovered about 100 years ago. Can you imagine when the first reports came of gorillas? We saw these monkeys that are as big as a man, and they're built like a weightlifter. A weightlifter, I better check and see how my nephew's doing. No, nothing yet. But it would be like reports of Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. I mean, at first people laughed at him. Oh yeah, there's this monkey that's 6 foot, gets 5, 6 foot tall, and he's built like that and beats his chest and all this and growls and whatever. It'd be just like somebody telling you they saw Bigfoot. But after they finally kept looking, they found him and confirmed. And now everybody knows. You can go to the zoo and see a gorilla. Some places you can go to church and see a gorilla. I'm not going to mention any names. So if gorillas escaped detection of our best scientists until just about 100 years ago, do you think it's possible that Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, things like that may have escaped our detection as well? Dinosaurs. Here's one that was just recently discovered in 2004 called the Billy Yuli ape. And what it is, they classify it as a gorilla, but it has the face that looks like a chimpanzee. And the rest of it, the morphology is like a gorilla. And it's the only one they know of that habitually eats meat. Most gorillas and even chimps and stuff rarely, if ever, eat meat. They eat berries and plants, things like that. Once, if they're in a starvation condition, they might eat meat, but they usually don't. And you say, well, why does this one eat meat? Because he's over 7 foot tall. He can eat whatever he wants. And you ain't going to say nothing about it. The natives call him the lion killer. And they actually found one killing a leopard. So, it's been confirmed. How did 7 foot tall apes escape detection of our scientists until 2004, until just modern times, less than 20 years ago? But they did. So I wonder if there could be some dinosaurs around. If these things are still around, maybe. Matter of fact, then they've continued to investigate since then, and they brought back this wasn't even a full-grown one. And the studies they've done as far as 2014, which is even more recent, less than 10 years ago, said there is a population of 10,000 of these gorillas over in the Congo. Our scientists missed 10,000 gorillas that get 7 feet tall and eat lions, but they found them and confirmed them. They exist. It just took our scientists a little while to catch up with reality. So, and I'm not trying to mock our scientists because, I never found them, but they did finally. But I'm saying just because somebody's a scientist doesn't mean they know everything. It doesn't mean they're worthy to correct the Bible. They're smart, but they're not perfect. They're not right all the time. Then they thought gorillas were on the verge of becoming extinct because there was only 50,000 gorillas left. And then in the Congo, in 2008, they found another population of 125,000 gorillas in a different part of the Congo. Again, you think, are our scientists looking with their eyes closed? How did they miss 125,000 gorillas until 2008? Maybe they don't know as much as they think they know. They know a lot, and I'm not trying to be too critical. I mean, they're smart people. They know what they're talking about for the most part, but they don't know everything, and they're not always right. Then this I don't really have an answer for. A guy from a church in Duluth, Minnesota gave this to me, and he's convinced Bigfoot's real, and from this picture I can't blame him, but he showed me a bunch of pictures where he would look between the trees and say, look, there's a baby Bigfoot in there, you can see his eyes. No, he was really stretching things. But he had 2 pictures like this that there's something there. Now, it could be a guy playing a prank on him. But see, I bought Halloween costumes for various things, various functions. They cost a couple $100 or something like that, maybe several $100. That's an expensive prank. And you would think if it was a buddy of his from church or something like that, he would have confessed to it by now. I mean, so that his pastor, David Sorensen, maybe some of you have heard of him. He thinks it's a bear. So I looked up bears and got a bunch of photos of bears. And this creature does not look like any kind of bear. I don't know for sure what it is. It's either an expensive prank or it's a Bigfoot, because it does not look like either of these kind of bears. Who knows? Then there are some strange creatures that have been discovered and washed ashore, things like that, that are very possibly dinosaurs in modern times or recently modern times. Sakhalin Island, which is off the coast of Russia, this creature washed up, which matches a modern mosasaur. Matter of fact, I have a mosasaur tooth in the collection over there. And that was just 2006. And they don't know what else it could possibly be, but it matches a mosasaur, which supposedly went extinct 65 million years ago. And there's another one that washed up in Sakhalin Island in 2015. Don't know exactly what it is, but it's certainly not a creature we see commonly, at least not from what it looks like there. Now, sometimes you get creatures that are decomposing, or they've been partially eaten, or partially, eroded, or whatever, and you can't tell what they are, or you can mistake what you think they are, and which is the case in some of these. There's no way to know for sure necessarily. Maybe if they could do some DNA studies, they might, but then somebody's got to pay for it, and somebody's got to do it. So we don't know for sure what this creature is, or some of the other creatures, but it certainly doesn't look like something we're used to seeing all the time. And we've got these that washed up in South Africa. Again, it looks a lot like a mosasaur kind of creature. This one washed up in Monterey Bay, California in 1925. It had a 20-foot long neck, and witnesses said it had legs that we can't really discern from the photo. Well, I mean, it's got a head that looks like a porpoise, a long neck, and then a bigger body, which is kind of like a plesiosaur, like Loch Ness Monster is supposed to be. So maybe. Here's one I think is turned out to been the carcass of a whale. I just mentioned the kind of whale a little while ago, but I can't remember, the name just escaped me. But so it probably is a basking shark. That's what I'm thinking of. It's probably a decomposing basking shark or something, but it is, again, just a strange-looking creature from 1970. Here's one that washed up in 1990 in Cape Muiris, Washington. It's a creature that we don't see every day and kind of looks like we would expect a plesiosaur or Loch Ness Monster kind of thing to look like. And again, fairly modern, 1990s, not that long ago. The scientists try and say, well, it was a manatee. And if you look at it, it don't look like a manatee. Oh, it was a whale. It was a gray whale. It don't look like a gray whale. It's got fins that a whale don't have, and different kind of tail and all. It was an elephant seal. And if you look, it don't match up with an elephant seal either. I don't know what it is, but I got a pretty good idea it's not either of those. It's some kind of strange creature from 1990, not all that long ago. A couple Chinese sea dragon that washed on the shore in 2005. Maybe the most famous one, the Zayumaro creature, caught by a Japanese fishing crew fishing near New Zealand, and they thought it was a plesiosaur. There's a lot of controversy about it. They're saying it's the rotting, decaying of a basking shark as well, or a whale, and it could be. Whales are cartilage, so things decay, and it might look like it had a long neck when in real life it didn't have a long neck, just everything is decayed. That's possible, but they've checked some of where the fins are, and the fins don't match up with a whale or a shark, so it might not be a whale or a shark. Matter of fact, I think they've done DNA. They did DNA tests on some of the flesh they kept to prove it wasn't a shark, because originally they said it was a shark, and the scientists did. And so they did the test and said that the protein, the DNA, it's not a shark. It may be a plesiosaur kind of creature, or it may be a decomposed basking shark or something, or a whale. It is. I guess, or whale most likely. I guess that's either one is possible. Here's one that washed up on the coast of Isle of Vera in Scotland in 1961. And notice how much it resembles this picture from the Loch Ness Monster in 1974. Looks like very similar, if not the same kind of creature. Then we've got Champ from Lake Champlain, New York. And Lake Champlain, New York is kind of part of the Great Lakes system. You got the big Great Lakes around Michigan and that area where we're from, and you go up further toward New York and Vermont, and that's they've got 2 or 3 other big lakes, and Lake Champlain is one of them. Not as big as the Great Lakes, but still a pretty good sized lake. And she took this picture, and she's a Christian, Sandy Mancy, and she's got no reason to lie about it. She says they've made fun of her and teased her and mocked her and ridiculed her ever since. She says, you know, if I didn't see it myself, I would shut up about it because I want everybody making fun of me. And she says, you know, she got a still shot, and they say, oh, it was just a log or something that had a funny shape and she just caught it like that. She said, no, I watched the thing swim and move. That just happened to be a still shot that looked like that, but it was a real creature swimming in the ocean. The FBI investigated the photograph and said that it was an authentic photograph. It was not a Photoshop. Well, they didn't even have Photoshop back then, but it wasn't doctored, it wasn't retouched, it was a real legitimate photo. Then they did some experiments. They've been looking for it ever since, just like the Loch Ness Monster, and they got a recording of some noise, but they also got evidence that there was echolocation in that lake. And only 3 creatures are known to man that produce echolocation: bats, dolphins, and beluga whales. Now, there's probably no bats living in Lake Champlain. All right, bats don't live in lakes. Dolphins and beluga whales are sea creatures, ocean creatures, saltwater creatures. They don't live in freshwater lakes. And if they did somehow get into it, how did they get into it? And they would die soon anyway. So there's something in that lake that produces echolocation. Probably not bats or belugas or porpoises. Probably some creature we don't know about. Maybe like, they call him Champ. In fact, the minor league team used to call themselves the Lake Monsters, right off the coast of the lake there. Then this photo also checked out by you can actually find the video on YouTube if you look for it. Again, authenticated by the FBI that the video and the photos from it are untouched, and it looks like a creature with a long neck and some fins swims alongside this boat, and the people on the boat are all excited. Oh, what's that? Look at that! If you see the video, it's even cooler than just seeing. When I try and put videos on PowerPoint, it always messes up, so I gave up. Again, they found another. You can look up video of this picture, something swimming in the Thames River in London, England in 2016, just again a handful of years ago, and it's got some kind of humps on the back. That ain't just some regular fish. That's something weird in the middle of the Thames River in London, England. The Cadborosaurus from Cadboro Bay, Alaska, videos from 2009, and it looks like some kind of long neck creature. Here are some that washed up in the past, the 1930s and 1940s, that are pretty much the same as Cadborosaurus, the same creature that they found in Cadboro Bay, and the description of it, and supposedly a juvenile one here that was discovered. And they're unusual creatures, whatever they are. They're not stuff we see every day. So I think it's evidence that there are unusual creatures that we might not know about, including perhaps dinosaurs. There's just a few more, Loch Ness Monster, and different pictures that people had taken in fairly modern times. A couple more, just different pictures. Some are more definitive than others. I don't know for sure exactly if that's a real dinosaur or a real creature, but the people that took the picture said it was. So unless they're lying, which it's possible. But here's some neat things. Robert Rines from MIT, who also worked for the Smithsonian and the Jet Propulsion Lab, in the 1970s took some pictures that in Loch Ness that sure look like a creature with a big body and a long neck, and some pictures of fins, and other pictures that might possibly be some kind of creature that had died and gone to the bottom. So there's some evidence there of the Loch Ness Monster actually existing, and we're going to look at some more evidence about the Loch Ness Monster. There's probably more than one creature that's been identified as the Loch Ness Monster, and here's one of them. This was found on an Apple satellite image in 2014, and that's just not a normal creature what we see. When they compare it to the trees and stuff on the landscape, that would have been at least 50 feet long. And so they decided, well, I wonder if that creature shows up on another satellite image. So they checked a different one, and sure enough, it's there too. So it wasn't just a glitch on the satellite or a glitch on the camera. Two different satellite images both saw the same creature. And there's just a colorized image, just different pictures to look at, some more of the same thing. And what the scoffers said was it was a boat making a wake. But if you take a look, the boat makes a big wide wake. This creature made a little wispy, at the end of its tail. It doesn't match. If you look where the fins on the supposed boat are at the end, and that's where the wake starts. But the fins on the creature are in the middle of the creature, even toward the front. So it doesn't match up with a boat. I don't know for sure what it is, but it sure doesn't look to be a boat. I have one idea I think it might be is the whale shark. The shape looks like it, the fins in the same place, the tail looks to me like there's a good chance it's a whale shark. Now you say, just like Lake Champlain though, this is a sea creature. What's a sea creature doing in a freshwater lake? But Loch Ness has access to the ocean. So there could be creatures that get into it from the ocean, either by mistake or creature. Like we have salmon that breed in fresh water and live in salt water, or the other way around. So there are creatures, a few, that can handle both fresh water and salt water, or that can handle at least for short periods of time. So maybe they come into the loch and they get back out, or maybe they get lost and maybe then they die, and so you don't see them anymore. There's all kind of possibilities. So if you get creatures that are able to swim in there from the ocean that are saltwater creatures, you could see them in Loch Ness. So there might be a number of creatures that have been identified in Loch Ness that actually came from the ocean and really don't live in Loch Ness itself. And here's some more pictures from Loch Ness that look like a whale, the fin of a humpback whale. Again, could be a whale that just lost its way and showed up in the loch when, he made a wrong turn. Made a wrong turn at Albuquerque, like Bugs Bunny says. And there's just another picture, same kind of thing. So we've got some decent evidence that there's something real has been seen in Loch Ness. It isn't just people making up stories. Probably more than 20,000 people have reported seeing a Loch Ness Monster. That's a lot of people to be mistaken or to lie or to fabricate or to hoax. I mean, probably some of them were. Some of them saw a wave and, hey, look, I see it, and reported seeing Loch Ness Monster. I'm sure there's cases like that, but I'm sure some of the cases are pretty legitimate too. They did see something. This is not the most convincing picture ever taken. I think that article was made to mock the thing, because if you look at the thing, that looks like the head of a seal, and then that looks like the backside of a seal, and it's probably a number of seals all swimming together, and they got a picture just like that to make it look like a large creature, because when you look up close, it does look like each of those are seals. So people can be mistaken. Some people do fake and make hoaxes. Who knows? But they've also found several creatures in Russia, even though they don't let their stuff out into the news like we do, but they've got some of the largest, deepest lakes in the world in Russia, where they may not be as big, but they're deeper, so they have just as much water as some of the huge lakes in America. And they have found and on sonar and different things, different creatures in their deep lakes in recent times, 2014 for this one, and they found jaw bones and a partial skeleton of one of them as well. So legitimate things here. Here's a picture somebody found on Google Street Maps in 2015. It looks a little bit like that one in the Thames River in London, England. So there's creatures out there we don't know about. This one was found on Google Earth in 2016 by the South Pole, by Antarctica, and there's speculation on what it could have been. It could be a whale. It could be a giant squid. Could be a number of things. They're just different pictures of it. I think it's possible. It could be a giant squid flipping over. But anyway, they estimate the size would have been at least 60 meters long. Meters are about a yard, so that'd have been about 70 yards. That's big. That's 200 feet. That's even bigger squid than speaking of the one I was going to mention earlier that had attacked the boat. The boat called the USS Stein in 1979, I think it was. They had just installed a new sonar stuff on the bottom of the ship, sent it out, and all of a sudden sonar stopped working. And it was integrated with some of the other things on the ship, and other stuff stopped working. So finally they called them back to port, says there must be something wrong. They said there was nothing. They tested everything before they left because they were testing this new sonar thing, and it was working just fine. Then they get out on the ocean and it stopped working, but they didn't hit anything, or at least nothing hard. They didn't hit a rock. They were out in the ocean. They weren't attacked by a megalodon, or else you would know that. It would probably affect the ship. Now, the ship wasn't a tiny thing. It was a 440-foot ship. It wasn't a little sailboat. So something that would have, it'd have to be pretty big to really notice. But when they brought it back to shore and checked it out, they found tentacles of a squid. It was trying to tear apart the underneath of the. It actually damaged almost 10% of the bottom of the ship. Of a ship 440 feet, that's a lot of damage. And they found the partial tentacles attached to it with claws attached to the tentacles. The colossal squid is the only squid we know of that has claws on the end of it. They only generally get about 40 feet. But the size of this thing would have been 150 feet from the spaces of where the tentacles were found. So there could have been a huge squid down there that attacked that ship. There are reports of what they call them roping sometimes, pterodactyls, pteranodons. A friend of mine, David Wetzel, saw one himself in Papua New Guinea. And the pictures they get, you don't know for sure. Is it a large bat? Is it a bird? Is it a pterodactyl? There's no way really to know for sure. But we do have some evidence. WikiLeaks came out with pictures that look a lot like pterodactyls. Of all things, WikiLeaks, they usually have political stuff, but they had a lot of stuff released from WikiLeaks. And those are them on the top. The ones on the bottom were taken by a group that Eric Hovind had sent to Papua New Guinea. And the natives had reported that these things are bioluminescent, means they create their own light, like a firefly, except it's kind of from an oil secretion or something on their skin. And at night, you can see them because they're bright because they produce their own light. And these are the pictures that were taken that were purported to be, and it looks like it could be a creature with wings. I mean, who knows? We don't know for sure. But this is just evidence we have. There was a quick video, it only lasts a couple seconds, and I got a still shot of it coming up next, of what looks like an I learned how to pronounce this name, but it's been such a long time since I've said it. Ornithomimosaur, okay. And it looks a little bit like an ostrich, but not really. The features are different. You look at the legs, this one's got front legs, and the tail's different, and the beak's different, the head's different. It's not quite the same creature, even though they may be similar. And here's the picture of it, and it's about a 2 or 3 second clip where some guys are just walking through the forest or the jungle or whatever, and this thing just zipped on by real quick. And it zipped from some brush and right into some other brush. So they only got, it took about 2 or 3 steps, that's all they saw. But it's really neat to see that thing on video, thinking, what? It's like an ostrich with no feathers, but had other features that an ostrich doesn't have. So I don't know. Who knows what it is? Again, it was let out by WikiLeaks. Just that they're discovering creatures all the time, and they don't know for sure what they are. This one found in India just in 2017, as far as I know, is still unidentified. Who knows? It could be a lizard, a rodent, a cat, I don't know. Dinosaur. Now we'll get to the big boys, though, the dinosaurs. There are a few places in the world that have tropical areas, jungle areas. Well, politically correct, we got to call them rainforests, or they'll cancel us. But Grand Chaco, matter of fact, we support some missionaries right at the upper corner by Mato Grosso and Cuaba. The Doolittle family, they got about 4 members of their family are missionaries out there. And now this whole area is not jungle, because there's actually some large cities in there, but the whole area, there's a lot of jungle around it. So it's not like one jungle that's that big, but it does have some large jungle areas where there's been reports of dinosaur creatures in there. But of course the most compelling ones are from the Lickawalla Swamp. That's 55,000 square miles, which is a huge swamp, huge jungle. And there are 2 others in Africa that are about half that size, which is still really big. And a lot of reports of various kind of dinosaurs that still up until modern times. 55,000 square miles is quite large. It's the size of a normal Midwestern state. And I just looked up Missouri. Missouri is 69.7, just a little bit under 70. So it's almost as big as the whole state of Missouri, one jungle. And then there are 2 other jungles that are half the size of the state of Missouri. Those are big jungles. I mean, can you imagine if somebody saw a herd of elephants somewhere in Missouri? Well, let's go find them. Let's go find, and Missouri's not a jungle. It might have been 500 miles that way. So you get in the car and go 500 miles. By the time you get there, it's somewhere else. Then you get another report. No, we saw them by the Ozarks. And so everybody goes to the Ozarks, and they're gone somewhere else. You could look for 100 years and never see them. So now, and that's without a jungle. If you got creatures in a jungle the size of your state that nobody goes into very far because it's, a dangerous jungle, people live on the outskirts and every now and then have interaction just barely into the jungle, but they don't go in. If they go in the jungle, they're going to get killed by something, large snakes and lizards and whatever else is in jungles. So they don't, that's a large jungle. There could be things hiding in there, and it's been untouched for all these years. So creatures could live, they don't have the same enemies, they don't have the same predators. Who knows if they can get bigger and larger? As a matter of fact, we know some have, some that they've discovered. They showed natives pictures of different animals, natives that live in that area. And when they showed them pictures of dinosaurs, they just casually say, oh, yeah, that's, Mokalemembe, he lives in the jungle. That's a Melituka, he lives over in the jungle. We stay away from them because they're territorial. They'll attack us, and they attack other large animals. They eat the same kind of foods as hippos. So they said there's a lot of battles between Mokalemembe and hippos because they eat the same kind of foods, and they're both territorial animals, so they fight with each other all the time. But then they showed these people pictures of animals that they don't normally see, like bear and skunks. If we see a picture of a bear or a skunk, we don't get freaked out because we know bears and skunks. They're all over the place. Those people said, wow, they didn't care about the dinosaur. Tell me more about the skunk. Yeah, man, that's cool. We've never seen one of them before. That's what they were interested in, which tells you their testimony was credible. These were just normal animals to them. Like if we saw an elephant, we know what elephants are. They don't live around here, but we know what they are. We wouldn't get freaked out if we heard about an elephant. Maybe in the state of Missouri you might, but the animal doesn't freak us out. But they've never seen these animals, so that's what they were interested in. They didn't even care about the dinosaurs. Our scientists are the ones that cared about the dinosaurs. There's an aerial photo, but you can't really make out for sure what it is. Picture of an airplane that's supposed to be Mokalemembe, which is one of the names of what looks like a brontosaurus or a brachiosaurus, a patasaurus, one of those kind of creatures. This guy named Atelier Riddell took a picture of a track that he thought was a Mokalemembe in the Congo, and somebody told him, no, that's just a hippo track. So he ignored it, put it in this, thought it was okay, no big deal. But then later on, he saw a hippo track, and he went looking at it. Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. That's not a hippo. That's a tripod. That's a dinosaur. Dinosaurs have 3. And so he probably did find a track of a Mokalemembe. Here's a picture of something swimming. The Japanese expedition got the picture. Either it's an elephant with a long trunk, a really long trunk, or it's some kind of dinosaur creature. And I don't know if, what kind of creatures they have swimming in those lakes over in the Congo, because most creatures will probably get eaten by something trying to swim across it. They've got testimonies of crocodiles 40 and 50 feet long in the same area of the world. There's some footprints of crocodiles. They discovered this monkey-eating bird in that swamp, and not too many birds eat monkeys. But even the neatest thing was they found this Trionex turtle. It's a fairly common turtle that exists in other places in the world, and it usually grows to about 3 feet long. Pretty good sized tortoise, but not dinosaur size. The ones they found in the Lickawalla swamp were 15 feet long, 5 times bigger than the ones they found other places in the world. Because if they're growing in a different environment with different enemies, different food sources, tropical climate, maybe they live longer. Apparently they grow much bigger in the Lickawalla swamp than they grow other places in the world, 5 times bigger. And then Bill Gibbons has taken pictures of many tracks and footprints that he's found in expeditions in the Congo looking for Mokele-Mbembe. They've gotten some distant pictures. These were made by a reptile. The previous ones were made by a mammal. So what were they? And these were 2014. He was planning on going again for one more trip, and it got canceled because of the COVID stuff. And so he's getting old. He's in his 70s now, so I don't know if he's going to be able to make another trip or not. Every trip he got more and more information, closer and closer to, how that goes. So what kind of creature made these tracks? They are pretty clearly reptile tracks. So was it a dinosaur? Or was it a 50-foot crocodile? Who knows? Here's some more pictures that have just been taken over the years. Amazon River, they named this creature Holodira, which translates saws, and you can see why looking at the picture. Some more drawings and photographs that people said this is creatures that we've seen. This one I put a paper for a special reason, but I probably ought to take it out of the lesson. But it's just kind of neat that it shows that they found a dinosaur that was able to change its skin color. So dinosaurs might have had features that we don't even think about, because modern lizards do that. We got chameleons and different other things that change their skin color today. So maybe some dinosaurs had the same ability. And this one, Kevin Duffy, was a guy on one of the expeditions with Bill Gibbons and took this picture of Mokele-Mbembe. And Bill Gibbons says he saw one from just about this distance and wasn't able to get a picture of his own. But they got this picture of it, and that's probably the closest they've ever actually been to what looks like it. I don't know what else that creature could possibly be swimming in the Congo. They don't have horses in the Congo, and if they did, he'd get eaten by something swimming across a river in the Congo. So that's probably not a horse, especially if you look at a close-up. If you look at that close-up, that shape, they'll say that the head is horse-shaped. Doesn't mean it looks like a horse. It means it's shaped a little like a horse head. You can see the dragon here. He's got a head that you might say is horse-shaped, but you wouldn't mistake him for a horse. Same thing with dragon here. Yeah, his neck and head is shaped kind of like a horse, but he don't look like a horse. That thing looks a whole lot more like a dinosaur than it looks like a horse. And that's probably the best picture taken out of the Congo in Africa. That probably is Mokele-Mbembe, a dinosaur creature. And these are things we're going to be looking at tomorrow morning, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time. I'm just going to zip through them just to kind of give you a little bit of an insight of what we're going to see tomorrow morning, things that are found in dinosaur bones. And possibly the same bones I have there, because I bought my bones from the same guy that they're finding these things in other bones. So just to give you a quick preview so you see what you have to look forward to tomorrow morning. They found that the things that they're finding inside of dinosaur bones is incredible. And this is talking about DNA, the half-life of DNA, showing that these things can't exist for millions of years. Barely thousands of years, sometimes hundreds of years. So that concludes the lesson. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything, or we can finish up? No questions? Let me see. Let me see if I get a message about my, no message yet, so I don't know if my nephew won the state title.
All right. Well, what we have for the remaining time today is we'll go into the fellowship hall. He's got his display there with the explanations and pictures and documents. And the things on the tables are, feel free to pick them up, touch them, play with them, and examine them. And don't miss the things that are out in the foyer as well. A 26-inch footprint is quite impressive to me. But anyway, there's snacks available there. We're going to go ahead and have a quick word of prayer, and then we'll be in the back to answer any questions and talk to you if you have any questions. All right? Father, I want to thank you for the day. Thank you for this information, and we pray that you help us to be able to communicate to lost people and people that are still confused by the misunderstanding of the creation event or evolution, as some men say. Father, we pray for your wisdom and your direction, that we might be a good testimony, and that we might point people to Jesus. We ask your blessing on the rest of our time and on our refreshments in Jesus' name.
Amen.
All right. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for Mr. Gropey as well.